Hello and welcome to the Hoop Troop podcast. I am Matt O'Connor, and joining me as he does on all of our shows is my cousin Luke Drobner.
What's up, guys?
And so we're back. I think we recorded like maybe 2 weeks ago or so. Since then, Luke and I caught a basketball game in person. We saw Knicks Mavericks, where the Knicks absolutely torched the Mavs by like 20.
RJ with 30.
RJ with 30. Luke bought a jersey to celebrate it. So, the Hoop Troop has been, we've had a nice couple weeks since the last time we spoke, but a lot has happened in the NBA. I feel like we're coming over from the last time we did speak, where everyone was kind of going through COVID protocols. It was hard to analyze a lot of the games going on. Everyone's starting to get healthy again. It's a little easier to kind of analyze and see, who's playing well, who's not playing so well. And it's kind of nicely timed because the All-Star game is a month away, if that?
February 18th.
Yeah.
So, like a month away.
So like a month away. And I think today what we'll do is we'll go through. Luke he's kind of fielded his 24 All-Stars who he thinks should be on the team. I have a differing list, but we're going to go through obviously we're going to be in agreement of like LeBron, Durant, and Steph are on the team, but towards the bottom it gets a little tougher. So we'll get to that. But Luke, before we go there, I do want to talk one thing, the Cam Reddish trade, because that's like the one eventful thing that's happened, like the big one. What are your thoughts on it?
I like it. I think it'll be important for the Knicks to have a well-defined role for Reddish as he starts to play.
But do you think they're really going to have one? Like, he's going from one situation where there's a logjam of players who want to play to another one, because the Knicks are the same way.
Here and there, I think Thibodeau's very sensitive with his rotations and who he plays and how he plays them. Like when we were sitting at the Knicks game, we talked about Toppin only playing like a couple of minutes at the end of the second quarter and the end of the fourth quarter, which to us is like, why isn't he playing more, right? But Thibodeau has this mindset where he has his guys and he plays those guys in the roles and the minutes that he likes. So I think if you say to Reddish, like, okay, here's the 16 minutes a game you're going to play and you'll always play those 16 minutes a game, it might work out well. And then as the years go on, Thibodeau likes him more, he gets more minutes, things like that, and he grows into a player. That would be great. But like you said, there is a logjam of players, especially because he plays like a shooting guard, small forward. You have RJ, you have Fournier. I guess Burks is playing point guard now, but still,
he's a mix.
Rose comes back. You have Quickly.
Grimes has been playing a lot of minutes too.
Grimes. Is Deuce McBride playing?
Not overly. That was more like because of COVID, he kind of got in, but he goes up and down from the G League. So like he's solid when he does play, but again, it reinforces the point of like, there's just plenty of guys trying to get minutes. And I guess they did send Kevin Knox over in the deal. Not that Knox was getting playing time. No, but he plays the same position. So like, I guess it technically, though, that like offsets, but
isn't Reddish and Grimes going to have to compete for those minutes?
Yeah. And so a lot of the discourse, because just on Knicks Twitter, I was trying to see the overall perception of the trade. And I think universally everyone agrees getting rid of that heavily protected Charlotte pick and Kevin Knox for Reddish is like great value. Like there's no denying that. But again, it comes down to the situation. And a lot of people are saying like they don't want Reddish taking Grimes's minutes, which to me, I don't know that I agree with that. Like if anyone is going to have to sacrifice time, I would rather it be a little Fournier, Grimes, probably most of his minutes. And then obviously as Rose, Kemba get back, you start to, you can pull from Burks a little bit more too, to get him more looks. I don't know. But I generally speaking though, like I think you're going to end up having him come off the bench and he's going to be the bench 3 because the starting lineup is pretty much set. And especially when
Who's playing the 3 right now off the bench? Quickly.
Grimes has been. And so
Grimes is playing 3.
2 or 3. So it's kind of been, you have
who's coming off the bench right now? Quickly.
Well, Grimes. So they've been running a little shorter rotation. And so I guess now you're kind of getting healthier. Nerlens is back, Taj is back. But so they've kind of been playing, smaller generally and the starters bigger minutes. But so right now you have Quickly coming off the bench. You have obviously Obi, one of Nerlens and Taj, if not both, and then Grimes. And so, you can sprinkle in whoever else you want to sprinkle in that kind of comes off the bench. Like sometimes they have a few others. If, the point guards are healthy, then you have Burks too. But so it would make sense that I would imagine you have Reddish fall right into that bench unit. One thing that I can't imagine him starting. So one other thing though is that Tibbs has been very adamant about keeping that bench unit together because they play so well together. And you have to wonder, like, does it throwing a totally new player who doesn't know the system into that unit, is that going to disrupt chemistry and flow? And is Tibbs going to tolerate that? Because all Tibbs cares about is winning. He doesn't care who does it. So I don't know. I think there's a lot to figure out there. But all things considered, I think the trade itself, the value for Reddish was there.
Kemba Walker's supposed to come back too.
Yeah, I think he's questionable for today's game. We're recording it. This is Martin Luther King Day. So big slate of games today, but the Knicks play the Hornets at 1. It sounds like Kemba might be coming back for that. I do think Reddish is still out. I think he has like a sprained ankle or something like that. So they're easing him back into play. And also just buying him time to like learn how to play with this team. But
I mean, ESPN has Cam Reddish down at the 3, and maybe it does throw off that chemistry a little bit, but I guess now you kind of have 2 full units.
Yeah.
I guess realistically, you have like 11, 12 guys. I guess there is a logjam. I think as the deadline approaches, I think the Knicks will need to make another move. And like Quentin Grimes could definitely be a guy who's on the move, or Nerlens Noel.
Obi's only playing 10 minutes a game, really. Like they might trade him. I could see them trying to make a move to upgrade at starting point guard. Honestly, it's like because that makes sense where you would trade a couple assets to go get someone who could facilitate the ball a little bit better for that starting group. Because as much as I like Kemba, this experiment isn't overly working. You might move him. And then D Rose comes back and you're going to want him coming off the bench still. So you might want to upgrade at that starting.
Who do you think you could get for Kemba, Grimes, Toppin, and like a first? Who do you think you could realistically
That's the issue, is that I don't know that there's that many great guards available right now that are going to be like that, sturdy point guard. One who has been rumored to the Knicks, there's so many connections between his dad and otherwise his agents, is Jalen Brunson. I could see being a target because he's a free agent in the offseason anyway.
But how much do you give up for that?
Again, though, because he's a free agent, like not a ton, but it sounds like the Mavericks aren't necessarily dead set on keeping him. So they might want to just get rid of him and get anything back. So that's why they could benefit from having like an Alec Burks, no? And so like, that's obviously not the guy I'd want to trade, but
I guess if you think that Luka is a point guard, but I still think that leaves the Mavericks bench even worse. Like the Mavericks roster in general is just so trash. I can't get over it. So.
I mean, yeah, it's gross, but so that's why I think the Reddish trade does kind of lead to there's going to be future moves, because I think we agree this logjam is going to be somewhat consequential for how Tibbs is able to keep everyone happy and actually run the team. So I do think other moves are coming. That said, I think other moves are coming for a lot of teams. Like honestly, even the Hawks trading Reddish, it leads me to believe that they have other things in mind. So I think a lot's going to happen in the next month, and it's kind of hard to speculate, but you can tell, I think that trade kind of set a market, and then now everyone's starting to reevaluate, and then we're going to start getting some more moves soon.
I think the Hawks are in a pivotal year, especially after making the Eastern Conference Finals last year. I think they need to lock into an identity right now, understand that Trae Young is your guy. They said Capella isn't touchable, so I guess Capella's your second or third guy on that roster payroll-wise. And then they kind of have to figure out everything in between. They have like DeAndre Hunter, Huerter, Bogdanovich, Gallinari, John Collins, who apparently is unhappy.
That
they
happens
have so
every
many guys,
year.
So every year he's like, I want to be out of here, especially because they just gave him that huge contract. And he's like, I love being here. I want to be here, which you never know. So,
I mean, that'll be, I do. Like, I think there's a lot that
also
can
now they
change.
have Kevin Knox. So
I also think that front office is feeling a lot of pressure, because the same way that last year there was so much pressure for them to make the playoffs, and they did. They went on that deep run, but now they're back to being I don't want to say irrelevant because, they're only a few games below 500, but like right now they're not even in the playoffs. Like they're out.
Yeah,
They're
they're
not,
12th in
they're 12.
the East right now. They're 8 games out of five behind 500.
That's what I mean.
They've
Like
lost their last 5.
it feels like their season is virtually over halfway through because they would need to go on an absolute tear to get back into consideration here. And so
I think it would be good for them to trade some guys away and build some, grab some assets, right? Because like they do need to lock into an identity. They're going to have a good draft pick, so it can kind of fill another role and give them some room to grow a little bit. And you remember Trae Young's what, 22, 23
maybe, yeah.
Right. So there's no rush. Yeah, he's 23. They list him at 6'1", 164. He's so tiny.
I know, it's ridiculous.
I weigh more than 164 pounds.
I mean, yeah, like but that's the thing though, like the way the NBA is set up now, like you can play that way. You can be small. Mm-hmm. Like it's kind of transformed where if you were doing that, even if this was like the 2000s, it probably wouldn't have worked when you're that small. But now it doesn't matter. No, so I do. I think if they could properly execute like a soft rebuild where you kind of punt on this year, you move some things, not all, you keep some of the pieces that you want there as your core, and you bring in other assets or maybe young players that you think you can kind of flip or, to like revive their career, that sort of thing. Something that fits your timeline a little bit better than some of the guys you currently have. And then you just kind of try and build with that, and you still try and compete, you still try and win games. But you do that little, that soft turnaround and say, hey, all right, last year was good. This year we're not having the same success. Let's rework it a little bit. Let's make some tweaks and see what we can do.
Yeah. How much time does Gallinari have left on this contract?
I think 2 years.
A year?
Year or two? Yeah.
Because if it was 1 year, he'd be easy to trade. Yeah, he's got 2 years. He's making 20 million this year. He's making 21 next year.
Yeah, it's not an easy contract to move, is the thing. You might be stuck with him.
But if there's one guy I'd want to move off this roster, it's him. Like right
definitely.
Because I like John Collins is 24. DeAndre Hunter is obviously also very young as well. He's 24 as well. So like I wouldn't want to move on from him. Maybe you can move on from Bogdanovich, who's also 29. But
I mean, you look at again, like the team that comes to mind here, the Thunder. Like let the Thunder go. If you want to get rid of Gallinari, send him back to Oklahoma City and attach like whatever, a couple seconds with him. Like you don't have to attach that much.
Yeah, maybe. Who knows? But what would you get back from OKC? That's the other thing.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how much they're willing to move. But I'm just saying, if you're even just trying to dump the salary to open up future space, worth a shot, no?
Yeah, I'm sure they've floated it past people, or I don't know what's going on with all these teams. But
yeah,
I mean, I guess you could get somebody back like a Darius Bazley.
But is that like, again, is that even worth it at that point? Or do you just hang on to Gallinari? Like, I feel like you'd rather just have Gallinari's production.
I think you'd rather have it too, but that would like, maybe I'd rather have Gallinari for next year. And if things don't work out, maybe I'd trade him then because he still doesn't have another year on his contract. Right. So maybe the Hawks aren't in a position to like really make a difference, really make changes in their roster, cause like, big ripples or anything like that. But it probably is a critical time now that they're not looking to it's most likely that they're not going to be in the playoffs with, I don't know, half the season already gone. They're pretty far out there, and there's teams ahead of them that I'm more confident in playing well, like the Celtics.
Yeah.
They're 4 games ahead of the Hawks. So like I could realistically see the Celtics just like out of nowhere picking it up and being good and moving up a couple spots. And that kind of stops the Hawks from being good because there's teams like, you don't expect the Wizards to continue to be in the playoff play-in situation. Maybe the Raptors here and there, even though they have looked good.
Right. I mean, Cleveland has kind of been falling apart a little bit. Mm-hmm. You never know. I mean, they're still probably they did so well early on, going to be at least in the play-in. I think if this trend continues, then it feels like it's going to be.
The East is really close. The Celtics in 11th are 6.5 games out of first place.
Okay.
So it's kind of weird. The Hawks are the biggest jump here, but they're 10.5 behind first. Whereas like in the Western Conference, 6th place is 11 games out of first.
Yeah. So I mean, the West, the difference between the West and the East is that the West is very top heavy. Those top teams are like damn good. And not that they aren't in the East, but the thing with the East is that you get into some of the lower seeds, and they're just more competitive. I mean, even if you just compare, for example, you look at ninth in both conferences, and you have
Clippers and Wizards.
Right. And so the Clippers obviously now don't have Paul George either. But then even just in this range, like you have, and I'm not even going to, like the Lakers, yeah, like I know they're technically in here, but I'm not even going to really use them. I'm going to say more like you look at Minnesota, you look at whatever, like are they as good as like Toronto, Charlotte, Boston, the Knicks?
I think they are. Like if the Minnesota Timberwolves played the Hornets in a 7-game series, I could see the Timberwolves winning that series.
I mean, I guess I don't know, but if you look at the way the conferences are set up, once you get from Minnesota, who's the 7 down, like to the bottom of the conference, everyone is below 500. Every single one of them. The 7 seed down is below 500.
I think the East looks better just because a lot of these teams are continuing to play Eastern Conference. Like if you're playing the Magic, who are 8-36 with the Pistons, and you play them twice, right? Your schedule looks a little bit easier. Especially like there are times when the Nets haven't been 100% healthy, so you're getting like throwaway games from the Nets, and like the Heat. There was like a whole month where the Heat were playing like one starter, Lowry, Butler, Adebayo, were all out at some point, and they were all out together, right? So like you're going into Miami and you're playing like Gabe Vincent.
Yes,
you know you're going to win some of those games. The Sixers struggled a little bit. The Cavaliers, who looked really, really good at the beginning of the season, now teams are going in there and being like, okay, we've kind of figured out how to beat the Cavs with their game plan. I think the thing with the Cavs was when they came out playing 3 7-footers, and then they bring guys off the bench like Kevin Love, who's 6'10" and can still post up and things like that. And by the way, he can shoot threes. I think it was a very difficult team to compete with, but
yeah. No, and I think you're right. And I think it gets back to what we were saying last episode, where it's so hard to like, I think we're still even looking at the standings with everything that went on. Like it's so hard to evaluate because, you know, you had stretches of 10, 15 games where you're missing half your team. And so it's just like, how can you really even say, oh, like that record's legit, that record's not? It's hard to tell. So I guess, yeah, I am being a little too critical of that when I look at the Western Conference for sure.
Okay, so I'm looking at the Raptors right here. At the beginning of January, I guess at the beginning 2020, was this the I'm looking at the wrong season. Sorry. Highlighted team, Toronto Raptors. The Raptors in November were sitting in 12th place, and they worked their way back up into 8th.
Yeah.
Right. So it's so crazy. I think a lot of these teams are still trying to find rhythm.
Definitely.
If you look at the Cavs were as high as
I think they were the
3rd, and now they've dropped down to 6. And even the Wizards were in first at one point.
Yeah,
Montrezl Harrell was in the MVP race. They were now in 10th.
Yeah,
you know,
I mean they're plummeting. Yeah. But all right, so now that you're naming people in the MVP race, let's transition over. I want to hear your all-star picks. Let's get that going.
Yes. Okay.
That's really the fun stuff here. And I know, all right, we're gonna have to take some things with a grain of salt, but I'd say the last week and a half, 2 weeks, we've pretty much seen everyone playing again. All the good guys. You know, we've had some injuries. Durant's gonna be out for a little bit.
Right.
But we do have a sense of who the top talent is in the NBA right now. So why don't you go? I'm going to pick your conference. Who do you want to start with?
I'm going to start here with the East.
Okay.
And I looked at the Shams tweet where they returned the fan voting.
Yeah.
So I also wrote down if the fan voting ended today and the fan vote solely decided the starters, these would be the starters. I had the same starters as the fan vote.
Is that right?
Yeah, Trae Young, DeMar DeRozan, Kevin Durant, Giannis Antetokounmpo, and Joel Embiid starting in the East.
Okay.
And I think some of these guys obviously are just kind of like perennial all-stars. You kind of have to put in there. Kevin Durant, Giannis, and Embiid. There's nobody better at that position in the Eastern Conference.
Right? I mean, also depending on how long Durant's out, like he might not play. Paul George might not be able to play. Like people who are going to get voted into the All-Star game they're going to end up being reserves and things like that who sneak in.
I don't have Paul George on the roster just because
he's been hurt for so long.
And because he's missed so many games, he actually doesn't qualify for leaders.
Wow, interesting. All right.
Yeah.
Okay, so that makes sense. But all right, so then who do you have in the West?
In the West, my starters are Steph, Ja, LeBron, Jokic, and Towns. The
Towns.
the fan vote has Curry, Ja, Wiggins, LeBron, Jokic. I can't stand Wiggins.
Wiggins.
I can't stand Wiggins. The fan vote is so
Wiggins.
messed up. The reason why Wiggins is in that fan vote is because I think Golden State fans just like turned out and voted for him. And I think he had a couple of good games.
Look, I'll give Wiggins credit. He committed to the Warriors and he kind of changed his game a bit and he's playing way more efficiently than he ever did in Minnesota.
Okay.
But
100%
he's
playing
still
more
Andrew
efficiently.
Wiggins. Like he's not third in All-Star voting. What are we doing?
He shouldn't be third in All-Star voting. He's averaging 18 and a half points, and it's not like he's doing anything else. Right? He 4 rebounds, 2 assists, 1 steal, half a block, 18 and a half points a game. That's that like D'Angelo Russell's doing essentially the same thing.
Right.
D'Angelo Russell's
It's
got
solid
4 rebounds,
play,
7 assists, 18 and a half points, and right, like
it's solid
people on
play,
this
but it's
list above
not.
him.
It doesn't deserve that. I think the problem is the front court in the Western Conference isn't great. The selections
No.
this year, there's not many guys that you're like, oh, that makes sense. Like for example, when you rattle off the Eastern Conference front court, yeah, Durant, Giannis, Embiid, easy. And honestly, I would even venture to say you could have made some other picks there. You could have said a Tatum, a Butler.
Tatum.
You have a couple other
Butler's
guys.
missed too much time too. It's the same thing as Paul George. He's been out for so long.
Right.
I just can't put him in that conversation. But obviously, a guy who plays great and when he's back and healthy is an all-star.
Right.
Just this year, he didn't play enough games for me to honor him with that. So
yeah, no, I get that. All right, so I think other than the fans having Wiggins, I think I agree with you. And I don't want to nitpick between starters and bench roles because it is kind of subjective and like how do you evaluate the difference between like a Ja and a Luka for that second spot in the Western Conference? Like they're both all-stars. Like there's no denying that in my eye. So what do you have for your bench? Because that's where it gets a little more interesting, especially towards the bottom.
Starting in the East or
either one, wherever you want to start.
Okay, we're gonna start in the West.
Yeah,
I have.
Sure.
So the first guy I left off of my West starters was Donovan Mitchell, so I put him in there. Devin Booker's played great. I think Anthony Edwards could get a nod here.
So you're adding both Booker and Mitchell.
Yeah, Mitchell, Booker, Anthony Edwards, DeJounte Murray, Luka Doncic, Shea, and Rudy Gobert.
Wow, so you're really just going guard heavy in the West.
I'm gonna after LeBron, Jokic, and Towns, there's not a lot of people in the West who play a forward center spot.
Yeah, you don't need a ton of them. Yeah,
right. And
there's more in the Eastern Conference too.
It's not even that there's more in the Eastern Conference. It's like Kawhi's been out all year. Paul George hasn't played enough minutes. Anthony Davis hasn't played enough minutes. There's just isn't those are 3 guys that are all-stars every year, no matter what, just because they're great players and they just haven't put the time in on the court for them to be all-stars. Maybe they'll get voted in and then, Anthony Davis is injured, so he gets a replacement or Kawhi Leonard gets a replacement, right?
But you really don't think you don't think AD has played enough?
He played what, 20 games?
Is that it? That seems shocking to me.
He's missed more than half the season.
Has he really?
He was out for 2 weeks at the beginning of the year.
And he has played 27 games of the 42.
Right.
Or whatever it is, 43, however many they've played.
And I mean, it's his stats aren't bad, 23, 10, and 3, and his efficiency isn't terrible. But
I would still probably give him the nod. But then again, you're right though. A lot of those other guards that you picked, are having better seasons than him.
Shea is playing very well, but it's obviously a stat pad.
Paul George. I think
Paul
we
George,
all know he's
25, 7 and 5 in 26 games. It's the same thing. I'd rather have Paul George up there than I don't know.
Except the difference
Anthony
is that AD
Edwards,
is going to play the next month until the All-Star game, and Paul George is not.
So maybe I put AD back up there if he comes back and plays well. But
yeah, for now, that's what you're looking at. All right.
Yeah. If anybody
gets
replaced, Anthony Edwards should get replaced by somebody if they do come back and play well. SGA could also get replaced. And a lot of people don't. It's like this. So DeJounte Murray, I relate to a lot like DeMar
Yeah.
DeRozan. DeMar DeRozan was doing exactly what he's doing on the Bulls now that he did last year on the Spurs,
It's just
but
people are
got no
bored.
credit for it.
Yeah.
Purely based because he was in San Antonio and nobody cares about small market teams like that. DeJounte Murray is averaging almost a triple double. He's having like a Russell Westbrook type
Yeah. He's having
year.
a great year.
And if Russell Westbrook was averaging these stats in LA, everyone would be like MVP favorite,
Right.
like we're going to the championship, but DeJounte Murray's playing out of his mind, and it would be such a shame if he didn't get it. So
That's fair. I like giving him the vote. I have a weird one in the Western Conference, and there was a conversation about it. I forget who was saying it. But the conversation was centered around Klay Thompson he is in fourth for guards in the Western Conference right now in the fan vote. I understand that's a fan vote, but the All-Star game is kind of for the fans. Could you make the case that Klay is back? People want to see Klay play. He should be an All-Star. Or no? Are you strictly saying he has not played enough? He should not be in the game.
We make this argument like the All-Star games for the fans, but like to a lot of these guys, being an All-Star or not being an All-Star costs them money. Like it's very important to these players that they're All-Stars, right? So not voting purely based on who I want to see would be wrong. Whereas I should be voting for the people who have played well and deserve the incentives of playing well.
How do you feel about like a Brandon Ingram?
I think he's played great.
He's averaging like 23, 6, and 5.
I want to put Brandon Ingram in there, and I guess I could put Brandon Ingram above Anthony Edwards or Shea, but he's kind of in the same situation as them, where like their team is, and but the
their team isn't their team is bad. They're 16 and 27. They're bad.
The difference between Brandon Ingram and Anthony Edwards or an SGA would be that Anthony Edwards has to share the ball with D'Angelo Russell, Karl Anthony Towns, so some of his numbers are taken away just because he's playing on a whole team, whereas Brandon Ingram's just chucking really. There's not a lot of guys there. I guess Jonas Valanciunas gets a lot of shots and Devontae Graham gets his shots, but it's not like at the end of the game, like we have to make like a decision like, oh, who we giving the ball to? It's like, okay, like Brandon Ingram, like please, help us lose by 8 instead of 20. So,
right. All right. So I think I otherwise agree with you. I think you pretty much picked the people I would have picked. I probably would have given Brandon Ingram a shot is like my big one. Just because I think he fits that same mold, as you said, as some of the other guys you picked, where it's, good stats on a bad team, but he's also been an all-star before. So I kind of gave him the benefit of the doubt there, but you're entirely right. Like, I think that's one where depending on who gets picked, maybe someone sits out, he slides in, but yeah. All right, let's go East. Cause the East, I had a little more trouble with the East, like as far as the cutoff.
Yeah, I think the hardest part about the East, again, I go like all guard. I have Zach LaVine, James Harden, Jason Tatum, Bradley Beal, Fred VanVleet, Darius Garland, Julius Randle. And the hardest part about
Randle
this is
the nod?
Only because I feel like if I put LaMelo Ball on there, then I just picked guards and one forward.
Did you say Chris Middleton or no?
No.
You didn't. See, I would absolutely, and I know he missed some time, I would give Chris Middleton the nod over Randle 100%.
I think Chris Middleton is having a very similar season to Julius Randle, except Julius Randle is the best player on his team.
I guess. But he's been bad. Like Randle and not to just harp on the Knicks for most of this episode, but like he's been bad this year. He's been 2 years ago, Randle, all over again.
I mean, if you watch the Knicks games, Randle looks bad. If you look at his statistics, Randle looks good.
But you could say that about Westbrook right now. His numbers are okay, but he's bad. I mean, on paper, he's averaging 18.7, 8, and 8. Like,
I guess that's not terrible, but
not terrible. If your starting point guard could get you 18, 8, and 8 every game, you'd say, hell yeah, sign me up. But he can't shoot. He commits so many turnovers.
Bad.
Right. And so, like, it's not, stats don't always mean something. And that's why, like, as much as I like Randle, and I think he's turning it around, and I'm over some of the booing and whatever, like, I don't think he's done enough to deserve the All-Star nod. And like even then, like you look at guys he's up against, like how do you pick him over Sabonis just because the team is doing better? Or how do you pick him over like, I don't know, Jeremy Grant?
Okay, so looking at the league leaders in points here, Randall ranks 28, Sabonis 29, Westbrook 30.
Wow. So
Obviously, Westbrook, yeah, Westbrook has a lot of rebounds and assists, but Randall 10 rebounds, 5 assists, 19 points. Sabonis is
he's like 19 and 12 basically, and then like around 5 assists.
Randall's 19, 10, and 5. Sabonis is 19, 12, and 5.
See?
Westbrook's 19, 8, and 8. They're all having very similar seasons. The difference between them is their shooting efficiencies.
Fair.
Sabonis is by far the most efficient player, only taking 12 shots a game, whereas Randall's taking close to 17 and Westbrook's taking about 16.
Right.
Their free throw rates are also very different. Westbrook does not shoot as many free throws as Randall and Sabonis. So,
yeah, I mean, that makes sense. And I think otherwise I agree, kind of pulling some front court players from the Eastern Conference. I think that's probably who it comes down to. Like I feel like Bam hasn't played enough. Vucevic has been solid, but I mean, not.
He's having a down season.
Yeah. And did you put Jimmy Butler in or no?
No.
You didn't. See, that's another one that I think I would give.
Again, he hasn't played enough time. It's the same thing as Paul George or AD.
How many games has he played? Jimmy Butler. I'm pulling this up. Let's go get Jimmy Butler's numbers. Jimmy
Butler's played 25 games.
Yeah, similar.
Okay, so last year when Vujovic wasn't okay, so Vujovic has been an all-star twice in the past 3 years, including this year. When he was an all-star in Orlando, he was averaging 24.5 points, 12 rebounds, 4 assists. This year, he's averaging 16.5 points, 11 rebounds, 3.5 assists. His defense has been better, but his offense just isn't the same. If you look at his per 100, he's a net 0, 106 offensive, 106 defensive. Back when he was in Orlando, he was a 112 offense, 110 defense, +2. So on a bad Orlando Magic team.
Yeah. All right. So now I want to look into some front court guards that you left off. Some Eastern Conference guards that you left off. No Fred VanVleet.
I put Fred VanVleet in there.
Oh, you did? Sorry. Can you repeat who your reserves were for the East?
Levine, Harden, Tatum, Beal, VanVleet, Garland, Randall. Fred VanVleet and Darius Garland, I put in the LaMelo. I wanted to put LaMelo over Randall because LaMelo is averaging 17, 8, and 8. But again, I feel like if I pick LaMelo, then it's just all guards.
Yeah. But I mean, sort of. Yeah, you're right. It is. This year feels very guard heavy. Like even in the Western Conference, I feel like I'm way more gravitating towards
I think that's just the NBA right now. Like even if AD was back, Kawhi, Paul George, Jimmy Butler, like Jimmy Butler is a guard. Paul George is a guard. Kawhi Leonard is a forward, but like basically a guard.
Right.
And Adebayo has a guard-like skills, even though he does play center. I just think like in general, if the top bigs are starters, right? Like Giannis, Embiid, Jokic, Towns, those guys are all-star starters. But after them, it's all about the guards. All about the guards. And
realistically, as long as because they're still going to do the draft. Like it's not like you're just going to have a couple, you're going to have obviously the 3 big guys starting in the West or whatever. Like it's going to get drafted differently and it's going to be balanced, I think. But you're right. Like I do think those starters are going to be the bulk of the big men, and then it drops off because you don't need more than 2 centers on a team.
No, you don't. And
also, like you can just play Giannis at center. It's the All-Star game. Who cares?
If you think about, if you think you could play Westbrook at center.
Yeah, it doesn't matter.
That's right. So like truly positionless, I put LaMelo over Randall, and I put Zach LaVine in there. Zach LaVine just got injured. He might be out for the All-Star game. So I put injury replacement LaMelo Ball because LaMelo Ball deserves it. He's going to get a lot of votes. Whether like everybody's going to vote for him. I think media members, other players. I think everybody.
I think he's going to get in.
LaMelo Ball, and Yeah.
I think he definitely gets in. Some of the guys you did pick, like I hope Garland gets in. I hope Van Vliet gets in. Honestly, Drew
Van
Holiday
Vliet,
is having like arguably the best year of his career. I hope he can find a way to squeak in there. Like 18,
is too crowded.
almost 7-5, like pretty damn good.
Good season.
And obviously his defensive numbers are through the roof. So like you factor all that in, I'm like, I kind of like it. Like I obviously it's competitive and it's hard to make it, but
yeah,
he definitely is a case. Like it's not like I feel like it's not like an egregious thing to throw out there.
I don't think it is either.
All right, Luke, I just got a notification. My groceries just got here, so I'm gonna step away for a second. I'll edit this out.
Okay.
But I need a quick pause because I need to just get them from my door.
Yeah, not a problem.
All right. All right, I'm back.
Okay, I'm looking at the standings by date.
Right.
Some of the Indiana Pacers have been in a 13th like the whole year, haven't moved every day.
I mean, because they're
13th.
bad. Like they're actually not good. And it doesn't overly make sense to me because I feel like they have pieces that contenders are all like, I want to go get LeVert. I want to go get Sabonis. I want to go get Miles Turner. I want to, they have a bunch of guys that on paper like should be able to win together. And they just can't.
You sent that tweet today.
That they want
looking for two firsts and a promising young player, 2 firsts or a promising young player and a first in exchange for Miles Turner, or a first round pick and a good young player for Caris LeVert.
Right. And so
which
it seems like fair value. I think it's a little more than I think I'd be willing to send, but
and like you said, like here we are debating whether or not Sabonis should be a all-star, which realistically he could be. Obviously, he plays great every year. His numbers speak for themselves.
And he's been an all-star in the past.
Right. And for the Pacers, it just might be time to move on. It obviously isn't working for them if they're in 13th this year. And I had hopes for them because they had pretty much brought everybody back. Rick Carlisle is the coach, better than, I don't remember the guy they had last year, but he was the replacement for Nate McMillan, who did a good job with the Hawks. Not so great this year, but,
Yeah. No, and so I'm kind of looking at them, and I think they're going to just kind of blow everything up at this point. I wouldn't be shocked if next season, when he's allowed to be traded, they trade Brogdon. Like I think they're going to end up going towards more of a full rebuild than what we were saying about the Maverick, or who were saying about this. Oh, the Hawks, excuse me. Like I think they're going to have to really commit to being bad for a little while and getting good picks and then building from the ground up versus other teams. And so that's why, like, I am still confused though, because those guys on their team aren't bad. And if good teams are trying to trade for them, like, why is it not working there collectively with all of them?
I just think it's a wrong scheme or like it.
Yeah, I mean, they might
realistically,
just not gel.
Miles Turner has to play center and Sabonis has to play center. But when they're on the court together, playing power forward and center, I just don't think that works. I think Miles Turner gets exposed trying to compete with some of the guys out there on the perimeter because he's a rim protector.
Right.
And Sabonis, again, same thing. Like if you get like the Boston Celtics who played Jason Tatum at power forward matched up against you, like Jason Tatum is going to cook both those guys all day.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think that's true. Like, absolutely true.
Even like the Raptors who have started playing Siakam at center, it's you're going to get matched up against Siakam, Barnes, or OG Anunoby, who all those guys are like really big, really strong, but take guys off the dribble all the time, and they're really good at it. And so, like, I just don't think Sabonis and Turner are equipped to handle teams like that, especially with the NBA moving towards that direction. They have to be like, I could see Miles Turner, I could see Miles Turner's on the Lakers and allowing AD to continue to play power forward because AD can kind of hang with some of those forwards like a Tatum, like we talked about a little bit. But I don't know how you feel about that.
I mean, I do. I think the roster construction is more of the issue and the way that they play together. And so I don't know. I guess I do. I think you could probably tweak it a little bit and it be okay. But is that what you want? Like, I don't know that they're going to put themselves in a position to really contend if they do that. And that's why I think that it's time to just kind of start blowing some stuff up.
I mean, like my opinion, I'd rather trade Sabonis over Turner, and that's just because I think Turner is a better center. But
But like, you don't need Sabonis to play center. You don't.
I just don't think he's a good perimeter defender. Which,
Yeah, I
like,
mean, that's
in the
fair.
NBA today, if you're
The
a
way it's
power
getting
forward,
smaller. Mm-hmm.
yeah, you kind of have to be a perimeter defender, right? Like if you think about other teams, like LeBron's playing center on the Lakers now, which is just like so insane. So
Yeah, I mean, that's also by necessity than anything else. But
like even if I'm the Pacers and I think about like playing the Rockets who are garbage, like Christian Wood's going to expose me playing two centers.
maybe I don't know that that's necessarily true.
I think
Like,
Christian Wood makes
I
a
think it's
fool
more when
of.
teams go small, they have trouble, and so like Christian Wood isn't necessarily the issue, but you're right. When you start playing the, teams that do go smaller, like you have, Tatum out there, like you mentioned, or you mentioned LeBron at center, like that poses so many issues to a Pacers team because they
Mhm.
can't really combat that. And so, especially when you have two clunkier guys and trying to have them guard, at least one of them guard out on the perimeter, it's a lot harder.
Right.
And so, yeah, I don't know. I think they're right for trying to make some moves right now because it's not working and they have to be honest with themselves. So, again, it'll just be fun kind of going to the deadline from here.
I think as we approach the deadline, it's obviously going to be fun. We've talked about the Knicks trying to continue to make moves. The Hawks might make another move.
I mean,
There are
but then
other teams in the
you
West.
throw in all the rumors. You throw in the Kings, the Sixers, the
Well, the
Blazers.
Sixers are trying to move Ben Simmons. Everybody knows that. It's
Right.
just, um, yeah. I mean, two teams that come off the top of my mind. I was just talking about teams in the West: Blazers and Kings. Like they got to move some of their stuff.
Yeah, and so
I
I
think.
think right, and then not to mention we've thrown out a couple other teams too.
Mhm.
Um, we mentioned Atlanta earlier, Indiana. Then you also have just kind of some weird teams that I think could make other moves. Like I think Boston definitely has been rumored. You have Phoenix has been rumored to like want more of a power forward. Just like a few of these teams that are feel like they could be a step away or whatever, making that one more move. Like I don't necessarily think Denver does anything. Dallas might, considering they're in fifth right now, and might want to try and push to be more of a contender.
I think Dallas needs to figure out their depth situation. I think like
Yeah,
after Luca, I think the value of all those contracts are just bad. They're either bad players or they're getting paid too much.
yeah. No, I mean I
Maybe
think
not so
that's true.
much like I can understand Tim Hardaway Jr., but again, I think his contract's a little much.
Yeah, I mean I think that goes without saying.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, no, but I mean it is kind of hard to speculate. Just because I feel like as much as we know, I feel like we watch so much basketball, we're so tuned in. I'm still
Yeah.
shocked every time something happens. Like honestly, even the Cam Reddish trade, I'm pretty surprised by. Like that's all it took to get Cam Reddish. So like
I mean, they'd been talking about it all year. People were like, they should trade him, they should trade him, they should trade him. So when it finally happened, I was like, oh, they finally traded him. But yeah, to the Knicks was kind of shocking to me.
to the Knicks, and for that amount, like they really did not get a lot
Give
for
up
like
anything.
he went what seventh overall, eighth overall, something like 7 to 9, something there. Um, and so like I look at him and I'm like, how is that possible?
I don't think he
But
was that. He was number 10.
number 10. All right. So I knew he was somewhere in the lottery, but um yeah, like I do though. I just think like a heavily protected first that realistically might convey to be 2 seconds like 4 years from now. And Kevin Knox, who is like borderline not an NBA player anymore. Like how is that it? It doesn't make sense. And so, but that said,
Yeah.
that does set a market. And so now a lot of these other trades are going to be modeled with that in mind. Because that absolutely sets the tone of all right, here's how much we're willing to pay for, a well-sized big with his, most improved shooting season of his career. And like he's young, he's only what, 22, 23, something like that. And so I just think teams have to adjust or recalibrate kind of what they were planning to offer Because it seems like, based on that trade, the market seems pretty dry. I mean, if that's how much you're going to have to give up for good players, then
Yeah, but
teams
would you
might try and
consider
sell.
Cam Reddish to be good? I think Cam Reddish right now is pretty average.
I mean, I think he's a
Obviously,
solid
he's
rotation
young,
player, and he's young with upside.
right?
I
So
mean, he's only in his third
averaging,
year. Like,
he's in his third year.
and a lot of his performance feels muddled in Atlanta because, again, we talked about their logjam, and he just hasn't really gotten the look. And so I think he had an interview. He had an interview saying that he thinks he can be a star, and that he just needs to work hard and whatever. I think he has the potential to be, but even if he's not, like, I think he can easily become like a very, very solid starting wing.
Mm-hmm. I mean, if you think about what it takes to be a top player, just like physically, you want to be between like 6'6" to 6'10", and you want to weigh somewhere between like 210 to 250 pounds.
He's that.
Cam Reddish is 6'8", 220.
Right.
So
no, he's the perfect build. He's shown flashes defensively.
He's shown flashes defensively. He's had some big games offensively, but it was during those COVID times with Atlanta, so they were kind of just letting him work the whole offense. It was like him and Lance Stevenson running the offense.
Yeah, I mean,
so
it almost doesn't count.
Right, but I mean, when you think about it, we're like, oh, look at this guy who had a big game. Look at Cade Cunningham. He had a big game. Cade Cunningham's doing the same thing where he's just kind of like, yeah, Cade Cunningham had 24 points and 12 rebounds, but
the Pistons are garbage.
22 shots.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? Yeah. So I think the most exciting part about Cam is he has gotten better as a shooter. So
no, that's the away, I mean, his spot up threes and especially his corner threes this year, the percentage is much higher. And I'm sure a ton of that has to do with Trae Young drawing so much attention and all that you're standing there wide open and catch and shoot threes. Like, most NBA players can drill those, especially when wide open. So, like, and I think it makes sense.
RJ Barrett's a good teammate, and I think Cam Reddish will be comfortable on the Knicks. So,
all right. So I don't want to bring it back to this, but we'll go full circle on it, and then before the episode ends, just because I have to bring it up. Duke basketball tweeted out something with Cam and RJ in Knicks jerseys, and in Duke jerseys from when they were teammates about them being reunited. Zion Williamson likes it. Then, like, I think the next day, RJ Barrett's getting interviewed. They're asking him questions, and the standard, like, did the organization come to you before we made the trade? And he's like, yeah, of course. And then they asked him, did any other former Duke teammates reach out about the trade? And he giggles and kind of says, like, we're going to keep that in-house or something like that.
Yeah.
Is it just like going to happen no matter what? Zion's going to be a Knick at some point. And I'm not even saying that just as a fan, because I honestly, with the way his career has gone so far, like, trading for him is scary. Like, could be a disaster. And so, like, you're going to have to overspend to get him anyway, especially he's barely played. But that said, whether it's via trade or free agency, does it just seem like he's going to be a Knick no matter what at this point?
I mean, you pray that it's by free agency.
I mean, yeah, but no one's taken that $5 million contract instead of the extension, which, honestly, don't you figure the Pelicans are going to give him that max extension? Like, you just have to lock him up.
They have to. And so
he could say no, though, and take the 5 years, whatever, risk being hurt. But then you got to figure someone else is going to pay him. You're just not going to end up making that same money.
No, if you're Zion, you take the money no matter what.
That's how I feel, especially with how hurt he's been. And chunky, of course. Can't leave that out.
I think everyone's like, oh, he's so injured. I think he's been having these problems his whole life. When he got drafted and they were like, you have to fix the way he walks. Obviously, there was something wrong with him and all these, like, bone fractures and whatnot. I think the difference right now between Zion today and Zion back in his Duke days or his high school days and whatnot is like he has a million doctors looking at him. They're like, we have to take everything so careful. Right? The Pelicans franchise have invested millions and millions of dollars into Zion. And Zion Williamson, who's a 22-year-old person, he's like, just let me play basketball, please. Right. And so I think everyone's like, oh, he's fat, he's overweight.
He is fat. He is fat
because he's not playing basketball. The only reason he's fat is because they're not allowing him to play. If he was on the court playing, he'd look unreal. He'd be shredded. He'd be dunking on people. He'd be doing it all. The difference between right and so what the Pelicans are trying to do, they're trying to get the most number of years of Zion that they possibly can, right? Like the Pelicans are right now are thinking like Zion wants to be here in New Orleans. We're making him happy. He'll, play 15, he'll have a 15-year career and he'll be here with the Pelicans. We want to make sure he's healthy and at his best for the other 13 years that he's healthy. Whereas, or they could have just let him go out there and play and he would have played 8 years and that shortens the window.
Right.
So, it's confusing, but like as a Knicks fan, as a Knick hopeful, whatever you want to call yourself, and you want to say that Zion's come to the Knicks, you kind of have to wait for this contract to end, for them to get him to have the max extension for the 5 years or 4 years or whatever it is, and then leave him free agency. You have to let him make up his own mind, almost like a Gordon Hayward type decision where like he was done with Utah. And I personally do not trust New Orleans to make anybody happy in that market. And that's just because it's not a basketball city.
The thing is, the situation going on in New Orleans right now feels oddly similar to what happened with Porzingis. Very similar, just with a little more high profile player. Like Zion, like perennial talent, which Porzingis not necessarily as much, but was still like he was an all-star and was unique. I mean, the unicorn, whatever. He tore something. He tore his ACL, and then he was still out. And then he said he wanted out, and he said he wasn't going to accept that extension. He was going to take the $5 million or whatever it was, and then walk later. If Zion does that same thing and says, "Hey, like I'm not doing this. You got to get me out of here."
But then you have to trust that someone's going to be stupid enough, the way the Mavericks were stupid enough to offer Porzingis that max, because the Porzingis max has not worked out for the Mavericks.
No, but that's my point. That's why trading for him right now seems very difficult to do. And so the Pelicans might not get the return they want, but also a team might have to shell out a lot more than they want to go get him. And so it is a weird spot because, like, honestly, the Mavericks gave up 2 picks and, like, I mean, granted, Dennis Smith did not pan out, but like at the time there was some hope in him.
There's promise. Yeah.
Right. And then like DeAndre Jordan and whatever else. In that deal, they offloaded the Tim Hardaway contract. They offloaded a few other just bad contracts. And so, you look at it and you wonder what you'd have to give up to get Zion. And I don't think I want the Knicks to give that up. You'd have to give up at a minimum quickly Obi, Mitchell Robinson. And
that's just because those are the guys you have on your roster. But when you traded away Porzingis, I guess you're trading.
You were doing salary dump and getting rid of him.
Okay. So the Mavericks gave up DeAndre Jordan, who was at the time. I think he was still playing valuable minutes for them, actually. Wesley Matthews, Dennis Smith Jr., who had promise but didn't pan out, and 2 first-round picks, 2021 and a top 10 2023.
Right. Top
10 protected 2023.
Right.
Keon Johnson was selected with the 2021 pick. Where is he? Is he in your?
Oh no,
he's on the Clippers.
Excuse me. So we traded him. We traded back, and then we got Grimes.
Okay. But I mean, like, not bad for the Mavericks,
right?
To take a chance with Porzingis, because honestly,
their issue was more that they were taking on salary and Porzingis. Like that's why I think the Knicks could have gotten more if they didn't offload Hardaway and some of the other stuff. So, like it probably would have been more picks or whatever whatever they asked for. But again, that kind of set the market for injured disgruntled star on that first contract. Zion would require more. He just would.
Yeah, I think Zion,
even though he's hardly played in 3 years. He's hardly played in 3 years of.
I know, but the playing time that he has had, more electrifying than Porzingis ever was.
Exactly. Like, I think the efficiency is through the roof and all that. But you go into, when did he stop playing last year? Because he got hurt pretty early in this, like relatively early in the season last year. It was like right after the All-Star break.
He played 61 games last year.
He did?
Yeah.
Oh, all right. Then maybe I'm wrong.
And he was an all-star.
Has he played a full season?
No, he played 24. He played the last 24 of his rookie season. He played the first 61 of the next season.
Okay. But he has, I guess he has hit over that 82 game mark. He's technically played one full season.
in his 61 games as a sophomore, 27 points, 17 shots,
Yeah.
shooting 30% from three on half an attempt a
I mean,
game.
yeah, the 3-point shooting's bad, but whatever.
On half an attempt a game, I'll take it, right? He's shooting those not because he's like trying to take threes. He's shooting them because he's like, they're leaving me wide open and I have to shoot it. Otherwise, they're never going to guard me out here.
Exactly.
And, right. So, like, let's say he starts hitting like 31% on 2 attempts per game. Perfect.
Yeah, exactly.
That's all it takes.
That's all you need.
Like, let's look at Anthony Davis. Everyone's like, oh, Anthony Davis is a great shooter for a big man. He's a career 30% 3-point shooter.
Right.
Like, if we take away.
He's got that mid range, though. Like, I think that contributes to that narrative a little bit.
Oh, 100%. But he doesn't have like a long mid range. A lot of it's like low post stuff.
Right. No, I mean, but that's the thing. Like, I think looking at Zion, like he does what he does so well that I think no matter what, you're going to end up needing to shed a lot. And I think they can, whoever does decide, hey, we're going to trade for him, you can argue as much as you want that, hey, he's overweight, he's been hurt, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
The Pelicans can be as patient as they want, because at the end of the day, you're counting on, you could call Zion's bluff and say, there's no way you're not taking this big contract. There's no way. And now look at what's happening with the Sixers with Ben Simmons, where it's like, all right, fine, you're going to take the contract. We don't have to trade you then either. So, they could easily find themselves in a position where they call Zion's bluff, he signs the contract, stays, and plays. That's how I just.
No, if you're the Pelicans, no matter what, you stick with your plan. Like, you let Zion do what he's going to do.
Yeah.
You offer him the max. If he doesn't take it, he doesn't take it, and like that's the end of the story.
Right.
And even then, he's a restricted free agent. You offer him the max, someone else offers him the max. You just match it.
Yeah, exactly.
All they're gonna they might even not offer him the contract. They might just be like, "Here's your qualifying offer.
Right. You're restricted.
You get on the market. We're taking it." Like that's that. Right. Like. So, and that's probably what the Pelicans will end up doing, because if they offer him the max, it's like a 5-year, $200 million contract. If you let someone else offer him the max, it's like 4 years, 160. So,
yeah, but then you run the risk of pissing him off. I mean, that like
he's going to be pissed off either way.
Is that not insulting? I mean, isn't that what just happened with John Collins? And John Collins is again pissed and wants out. And I know it's just John Collins, so like, fine, you can ultimately trade John Collins. It's not bad. Doing that with the guy who's supposed to be your cornerstone.
Let me ask you this:
the best player in franchise history.
If I offer Zion the 4-year, if I take up the 4-year max, or I can give Zion the 5-year max, does he not leave anyway? Like, I have 4 or 5 years to make Zion completely happy.
But then he can get the super max if you do give him that extension.
If I let him take the 4-year max, and in the next 4 years we develop a team around him that is a playoff contender, would he not want to stay? He's still he's still going to be the face of our franchise.
Right.
We can still offer him the next contract, right? The guy, like, either way, offer him the 5-year or the 4-year. Like, if the team fails at the end of the 4-year or the 5-year, I'm still
right.
Realistically, Zion's going to move on.
He's going to move anyway.
So
it's a fair point.
The salary hit isn't as bad.
I just think if you're the Pelicans, you want to lock him up as long as you can and keep him there.
I don't know. It's a risk. We'll see what happens.
Yeah.
Basketball, obviously, neither of us are president of basketball operations, but what's the guy's name? David Griffin, I think.
Yeah, he's in charge, and he's kind of botched it.
When was he the GM of the Cavs? Oh, he was the NBA. He was the GM.
He was the GM of the Cavs, and now he's with exactly.
From 2010 to 2019. Yep. Dang.
I know.
So he made all those trades to kind of keep LeBron happy. I guess he drafted Kyrie, traded for Kevin Love.
Yeah, I mean, he did everything right there. Like, I feel like generally, other than the Kyrie trade, where they got Isaiah Thomas, like that was like the one really not great thing. But like they still went to the finals after that, I think. So like, granted, so much of that is having LeBron James in his prime, but at the same time, did everything he could. I mean, Kevin Love contract's bad, but like you kind of rewarded him for what he did to win a championship. So like, I don't know.
Kevin Love contract now is bad, but if LeBron had stayed, it wouldn't have been.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I don't know. Things are moving.
I know.
Knicks trades and whatnot.
No, we're gonna have a little fun trade season.
I'm very confident Zion will end up in Knicks in 6 years.
Ooh, all right. I like that. It's a little optimistic.
I believe.
Yeah. All right.
And
well, you know what?
Luke,
we've been on for over an hour. And I need to go put my groceries away. They're just sitting on my counter, some milk and stuff. So that's got to get in the fridge.
Okay.
But yeah, no, I'm pumped to see what the next month holds between picking some all-stars and the trade deadline. Next month is realistically be the most fun we're going to have watching the NBA and following it until the playoffs. So the next month is trade season is upon us. This is the fun part. Yep.
The trade deadline's before the All-Star game.
Yes, it is now because they changed it after Boogie got traded like during the All-Star game. They were like, all right, we can't do this. Yeah. So yeah. So now
Less
it's right
collusion.
Before. Yep. Exactly. I think that's kind of
can't put their trade secrets on the
you can't put everyone in a room together and expect nothing bad to happen. So but all right, Luke. I'm going to sign us off. This is the Hoop Troop podcast. Thank you guys for listening and join us next time.